fruits.
Balrogs Blastbeats with the dab on the Blastbeat intro to this show. This is the nerdiest podcast that ever there was, the coolest uncool kids or podcast or whatever it is. Usually there's three of us, but if you're watching on YouTube, you may have noticed there's four of us. I am one of your hosts, Josh Redbeard.
I am another one of your hosts. I'm Margy.
And howdy, I'm Grant. And Redbeard, why don't you tell us about our guest? Introduce him for us.
I get to introduce one of my favorite human beings, all-around creative, amazing tattoo artist, filmmaker extraordinaire, works with the coolest people you'll ever meet in the world, Mr. Josh Todaro. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, guys. I'm stoked to be here. And that was a very glowing intro. I don't really like it when people shower me with compliments like that. It makes me feel awkward, but I love it. And thank you so much, Josh, because I feel very similar
Josh is never
you.
that nice to anyone. It's fine.
Yeah.
I know.
mean to most people, obviously, but
Just the meanest.
But we start off every podcast, as we do, with a thing called the nerdiest thing. But it is the week of Halloween, and so we're flipping the script this week. And this week we are going with the spookiest thing. So, Josh, we'll start with you as the guest. What is the spookiest thing that you've done this week?
This week, in particular, I just got back from LA, and I went to the Universal Horror Nights. At Universal Studios, and that was definitely the spookiest thing I've done this week. It's so fucking awesome. Have any of you done that before? Or
Oh, you said LA.
no, in LA.
Oh, I thought you said Adelaide, and I was like, yeah, Adelaide's pretty spooky, I guess. Like,
Oh my god,
that sounds
I wish.
amazing.
Well,
I've done it, but
Yeah.
I did it in 2010, so 12 years ago. So it may have changed a little bit
Yeah.
since then.
yeah, I think
So
it's probably I've done it about 4 or 5 times, but I think it's probably a similar setup where just basically every year for the month of October they open up Universal Studios, but at night time instead, so like 7 p.m. till 2 in the morning or something. And some of the rides are still going, but mostly what they do is set up these walk-through mazes of like horror movies, like some of the more recent ones that just came out this year. Like this year was Black Phone and Nope, and some of the other newer ones. And then they did like some classic ones like the original Halloween and Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Amazing.
It was fucking awesome. Yeah, so you like basically walk through like the film, and there's like all these people just like jumping out at you, and they like recreate the most iconic scenes from the film. And then when you're walking through the theme park on the way to each maze, there's just like zombie clowns with chainsaws just like running around the park, just like revving these chainsaws in your face and chasing everyone and leaping out from behind like the bushes and behind bins and stuff. And you're basically just like screaming, you just don't know what to do, and it's like seriously the best fun ever. Me and my wife Avalon, we just are obsessed with it.
Oh,
The only thing that I remember from when I did it is, I was going through one of those mazes, and I was in this room where you kind of like, you walk through the door, and then like the wall is like, the door's on the very, very left side, and then there's a wall, and then there's another door kind of at the end that goes off. And then on your right-hand side was like this like raised area with some like little draped sheets. And I was like, they were covered in blood, and I was like, oh yeah, this is just meant to look spooky. And then all of a sudden this dude just bashes through the sheets and swings a chainsaw right over your head, and I like shat my pants.
Oh my god.
It's so fucking good. Like the amount of times I got like genuinely spooked was like, fuck. It's insane. Like, because you're mostly having fun. And you're like, oh fuck, that's so cool. Like I remember that scene from this film, or like the Halloween one. It was like, you walk through it, and the first room is like the staircase with like child Michael Myers at the top of the stairs in the clown outfit, and then the next room is like Michael like chasing after Laurie, and then yeah, and yeah, these Michael Myers just sort of like keep bursting out from like behind bookcases or like, so you're like kind of trying to appreciate it, like, wow, the set design's so amazing, and then you're just like, bah! Like something just like jumps out at you, and it's so fucking good. I love it.
Oh.
But because like you're into horror on like a filmography level, does that mean like you probably get scared more because you're paying more attention to the accuracy of the set rather than the people that are probably like expecting to be scared?
Yeah, I think so. I'm definitely not like, yeah, some people are definitely walking through really cautious, just like, when are they going to get me? When are they going to get me? But like, I try to do that, but then I'm instantly like, just like, oh, actually, fuck, that looks so sick. Oh, that's that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just trying to appreciate it so much from like a horror enthusiast.
You're walking there like, oh shit, that's little Michael's first baby too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's all about the little things. But yeah, it was so good. It was like the best fun ever, and we were there literally till 2 a.m. and yeah, we went through every maze, and it was amazing. So that was definitely the spookiest thing I did this week. What did everyone else do?
Yeah, what about you, Margy? As you're like the resident horror fan of the group, I know that you love being scared and scary movies and hearing.
I've done very cute ghost eye makeup. For anyone watching at home, I have little ghosties on my eyes. I like the naffness of Halloween. Yeah, my two spooky-ish pre-Halloween activities. I watched the OG Hocus Pocus to prepare myself for Hocus Pocus 2 because I'm very excited. Forgot that the cat died. Well, not really died, but you know, I don't know. I cried. And then I listened to the latest episode of my favorite podcast, All Killer No Filler. It's about serial killers by two female British comedians who are great. One of them's really grumpy Mancurian who just complains about everything. So I can relate. And this week they did Amelia Dyer, who was a baby farmer from 19th century England. So baby farms and baby farmers. So she was a nurse, and for over 30 years she was a baby farmer, which is like a practice of just like adopting unwanted children in exchange for money. Like, and then you'd just kind of have this house full of kids and you could adopt them out and stuff. But a lot of them directly or indirectly died, and she ended up going for a few stints in a mental asylum. Probably the reason a lot of them died was because there was this cordial that they used to give to kids that had a huge amount of laudanum in there.
The Jim Jones special.
Exactly. So kids ended up being so sedated that they wouldn't eat, and then they just die of starvation because they're just stoned out of their minds. Anyway, after her mental asylum stint, she gave up on the baby farming cover, and she'd just adopt children, like, and kill them and then dispose of the bodies. And she was known for strangling them with white fabric and then disposing of them in bags weighed down with bricks. No one knows exactly how many kids she killed. Her daughter carried on the trend of it though. But she ended up being caught because on one of the bags that she discarded the body in, there was a label addressed to her. So the detective just read the label and was like, reckon this might be. And she didn't deny it or anything. They showed her. She's like, yeah, right. That she was arrested and hanged. She wrote a few notebooks of confessions. But on the plus side, her actions led to stronger laws for child adoption. She was hanged in 1896 and she was active for like 30 years. So Jesus. back in England, she moved across the country a fair bit. But yeah, she led to the profile of the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children progressing. So I guess that's a win. But anyway.
I love that that's what it takes. You're like, you know, we should. So if, like, it's either like you're allowed to murder like 14 kids, or you can't be like mean to them. It's like that's like the level. It's like, well, see, if we let people be mean to kids, that means they can kill 14 of them. So we've got to tighten that up.
Yeah, it's like, probably much more than 14. But she it's like it's okay to give opium to kids, but I think killing them and leaving them in bags is just a bit much. Like, we've got to do something about that. So that's my serial killer of the week.
Oh dear.
Grant, how you spooking it up?
So I was going through Netflix last night and I came across a new TV series called Cabinet of Curiosities. It's a horror
Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah, horror anthology.
I've heard good things.
I've only watched the first episode, But yeah, it was really well done. Obviously, I think every episode is directed by someone different, and or
Yeah.
have a different tally play. So the first episode I watched was actually directed by Guillermo Navarro, which I'm not sure what he's done, but his name does sound familiar. It's another Mexican director. What's his?
And it's not.
I wonder if there's a relation to Dave Navarro.
Benedicio.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah. So he also worked on Pan's Labyrinth, Night at the Museum. Okay. Zathura Space Adventure. So he's got Hellboy, some kids movies, and Pacific Rim, and he's just decided, you know what, I'm going to make a really weird horror thing. But also, knowing most like horror directors, like I'm sure he did a lot of horror when he was coming up, and then just managed to slide into the more mainstream stuff for the meantime. But yeah, that first episode, fantastic. Like the visuals are great. Like obviously very nice, high budget, nice mix of practical effects, but also like Guillermo del Toro level. Like if there is like CGI effects, like they're his standard. Like very well done. They've only just, I think they released the first 2 episodes, and then I think on the 28th, which is actually today, they released the rest of the series or another 2 episodes.
Ooh.
So I'm pretty keen for when we finish up here today. It's exactly what I'm going to go and watch.
Awesome. I still haven't watched Nightmare Alley, his last film.
No, I haven't seen that either.
Bradley Cooper and stuff. It looked really cool. Like the set design looked fucking awesome, but it's just one of those ones I haven't seen yet. But I think it's next on the list.
Yeah, I might even also put that up for the night.
Nightmare Alley.
Yeah.
Spoopy.
Yeah. It actually looks like a lot of fun though. I don't think it's actually like too horror. It's kind of like Bradley Cooper's like a detective, and he's sort of, it's almost like film noir style, but kind of seems like a cross of like Indiana Jones meets like a horror movie sort of thing.
Yes, Temple of Doom.
Set it like a carnival or a freak show or something. So visually, it looks amazing.
Oh, I don't want to go to a carnival or a freak show.
No, that's where all the visual creepiness is. It's perfect.
Yeah, so the good
Such
stuff.
a good setting.
Well, I mean, speaking of fun, my spookiest things along a similar sort of path. It was a movie that I'd like put off watching for a while because I was like, I just don't know if this is going to be good. But I watched it and I really enjoyed it. I finally sat down and watched Studio 666, the Dave Grohl.
How good is it?
It's really, really funny. It's really well done. It's really cheesy. I
fucking loved it.
Spoiler alert, a member of Slayer dies in it. It's just ticks every box that I need it to tick, really.
The cameos were so good. My God.
Yeah. The
Kerry
cameos
King
are
as
good.
like the roadie was like so fucking good.
But yeah,
I
did watch it for the longest time because I was like, it's just going to be cheesy. Like a lot of times when especially like rock stars do films like this, just like, I don't want to watch it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just like,
cheese is what you want.
Surely like about 10 minutes in, you realize, like, obviously Dave Grohl has that humor. Like, he's very like poking fun at himself. I don't think the film takes itself too seriously at all. And so once you're like in the fun of just like, oh shit, I'm watching like a band just fully like go for something they've never tried before, and they're just gonna have fun with it. They don't really care what people think. Like, I don't know, once you're in that headspace with them, I think it's a lot of fun. And if they were trying to take it really seriously, I think it would have been a flop. But
if they were trying to make like Cradle of Fear or something like that.
Yeah, if they were trying to make I think that's kind of what I was basing off. Is stuff like Cradle of Fear. There's some fucking like MGK's done a fucking movie that I just don't ever. I wish would just die in a hole.
But I guess like you've seen all their film clips, like you knew it was going to be good. They've got form in the area.
Yeah, so I was curious, but I got around to watching it again. I was really, really happy I did. So so that's my spookiest thing of the week is saying, I gave Studio 666 a go and I was not at all disappointed. It was very, very funny.
Okay, that could be a horror movie I can handle.
Like the visual effects, like the special effects with the makeup and the practical like gags and stuff like that were like top tier, done so well. But would you say like the best part of the film is the fact that Foo Fighters are recording a doom metal album the whole time, and it's actually good? Like,
Yeah,
fucking,
I think
Oh
that's
my
the thing
God.
as well. It's like, Dave Grohl just has the ability to do anything. Because I'd heard the soundtrack
I
long
know.
before I saw the film. Like, Lachlan had played it on the
Yeah.
radio a couple of times, and so I was just kind of like, yeah, this is actually like really good music. And so
I was
yeah,
gonna
I
say,
think
'cause they
that's
actually released it,
nuts.
didn't they? They released. They just
Yeah.
they actually
What's
made
it
the
called?
album.
Something Widow or
yeah, I've already forgotten.
Doom
Doom Widow or Black
Or like
Widow or Death
Doom
Widow.
Widow or
I think it was Doom
something
Widow,
like
but yeah, it is
So
actually
fucking good.
phenomenal. It's really, really good Doom album, which is sick.
Yeah.
Oh,
So, yeah.
that's a bad feeling. I looked up Doom Widow, and it's just a bunch of articles about MF Doom's wife. That's sad.
Okay, no, it's not that big.
This is not the joy I was expecting.
That's sad. Very sad. But we're gonna move in to the medium beat for this week, and we're keeping it up. The spooky Halloween edition of Balrogs and Blastbeats, where we're gonna keep this light and fun in terms of the medium beat this week. And I just kind of wanted to know
summon some ghouls.
and I wanted to know what's your favorite scary movie, and I specifically say scary, not horror film, because maybe there's something else in there. Like it could be scary, but technically not a horror film. It's up to you and however you want to take it. So Josh, maybe as the guest, we'll start with you again. What is your favorite scary movie?
I feel like you're not allowed to ask me that question without doing Ghostface's voice.
What's your favorite scary movie? No, I can't do voices. That was
Perfect. That was good.
That was wonderful.
What's my favorite scary movie?
Mm.
I don't know. I'm one of those people that like really find it hard to like narrow things down. I like to like cheat the system by being like, what's my favorite monster movie? What's my favorite ghost supernatural movie? What's my favorite classic horror movie? What's my favorite modern horror movie? There's lots of genres in there, but
Well, what's the first one that comes to mind when you think about all of that? Because there'll be one that pops to the front of your head, and that's the challenge right there.
yeah, I'll give you two. I'll give you a classic and I'll give you a modern.
All right, go on.
So I think classic would always have to be the original Halloween, 1978,
Yeah.
John Carpenter, the birth of slasher films, the birth of independent horror. Or maybe not the birth of independent horror, like there'd been like Night of the Living Dead and stuff like that in the 60s and whatnot. But
I think
like,
it was the one that showed
definitely-
people you could make money doing it.
Yeah.
Yes, because it actually held the record for the highest grossing film, or maybe highest grossing independent film
Yeah.
for a long time, because it was made so short, but at like such a small budget, but then it made basically
Yeah, I think
like
it made
what a
$73
studio
million
film would
or
have
something
made.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just think it's an absolute classic. The way John Carpenter, did suspense. It hadn't really been done like that before. And the way that the killer was almost like this faceless shape that, he's actually called the Shape. He's not really called Michael Myers. And the reason is because he is just this shape. He's just this figure that you have to imprint your own fears onto him. And yeah, I guess like hearing interviews with John Carpenter and stuff like that, he would say that, yeah, people thought they saw extra things that like weren't there, and they'd remember these scenes that like never really happened. And I think that was just the genius of him getting inside, the audience and letting them project their fears onto the screen, rather than, showing everything or showing this gory face that you're like, oh, okay, that's the face I'm scared of. It was just this genius thing that I still think holds up today, like just so well. I can watch it any day of the week and just be so blown away by it. And also his synth score is just like incredible. I think it really paved the way for like a lot of copycats for decades after. So
Friday the 13th.
I'm probably preaching to the choir, like even mentioning it. It's not very obscure. A lot of horror fans have the same opinion, but
if it's your favorite, it's your favorite.
for
That's
me,
fine.
I actually
Yeah,
I did
yeah.
only learn recently that the mask that Mike Myers wears in the movie is actually a Captain Kirk,
Captain
William
Kirk,
Shatner
yeah.
William
mask with
Shatner
the
mask.
eyes cut out.
It's so great.
I didn't know
But then,
that.
yeah, you look at the original and it's almost scarier. It's like the
Yeah.
most ugly,
Yeah.
poorly made mask ever.
Yeah, it's
with
'cause,
like
like,
the
it's the-
saggy cheeks
Yeah.
and everything. It's like, what were they thinking? It's terrifying.
It worked. Yeah.
But yeah, painting it white, receding the hairline a bit more, and cutting the holes for the eyes bigger. That's pretty much all they did,
Yeah.
and it's pretty genius.
All
I
right,
would've
what about
loved it.
Easy DIY Halloween
Yeah.
costume for everyone at home.
I would have loved it if they had
Exactly.
had like you know, sometimes like say like Darth Maul, for example, like he had like lines in the movie and they took him away. Or it's like he just had like
Yeah.
all these like William Shatner cadence lines. They're like, "Oh, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
We gotta cut it. We gotta cut it. This doesn't work."
Laurie, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not having the same effect. Let's just mute him and move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what about the modern film,
That's
Josh?
funny.
What's the favorite modern film?
There's a fair few, but one that like really stands out as like, again, something different, something that I feel like has now started a new wave of, you know, the thing that people are going to be doing for a while, was Hereditary. I just thought it was like absolutely fucking incredible and so terrifying in a way that I hadn't really seen before. I think Ari Aster, the director and writer, is very clever at making the horror more emotional. Like, I don't know, when I describe it as an emotional horror rather than like a psychological horror, because I think it like affects, you know, your heart more than it does your brain, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. It's like, it's kind of like, it's this family drama, and it's like the horrors of family is like heightened
Yeah.
to this point where I feel like when you're watching the film, you're just like uneasy and just, you feel just so unsettled the whole time. And I just find that like really crazy the way he did it. And I've seen it like about 6 or 7 times so far over the last couple of years since it was released. And it's like each time I watch it, I feel exactly the same as the first time I watched it. It's not getting any more watered down at all. I still am like having like anxiety watching
that
it,
tension,
and it just like makes me feel like actually like physically ill, where you know, I can watch someone like being stabbed or like, you know, some gory blood scene, or you know, I can watch stuff like that over and over, and it doesn't really have too much of an effect on me. But like supernatural stuff definitely has an effect on me, but I feel like the more I watch it, the more I know where the scares are, and it's kind of like I get a bit desensitized by it each watch. But something about Hereditary does not dwindle the more times I watch it. So I have to put it up there with, one of the best horror films probably ever made, and definitely my favorite in modern years. So
Fuck yeah.
yeah.
What about you, Grant? What's your favorite scary movie?
Oh, it was hard to split up 3. In a way, they're kind of like all like in a linear way borrowed from it from the previous movie, but I couldn't cut myself up between Alien, The Thing,
Ooh.
and Event Horizon.
Nice.
Oh.
Yeah.
But
See, he's cheating in genre.
Yeah.
Making it into this sci-fi horror genre.
Yeah.
See, I've got the sci-fi horror genre as well. The Thing is definitely at the top of it.
Yeah.
And Alien is fucking close as well.
So I love the Alien. Alien I was gonna go with because it's like my first horror movie. But I think
so good.
I think The Thing ages better than Alien. Like Alien's still aged really well, but I just think The Thing just holds up perfectly today. Like just the way that like they build the tension in it. You know, even like say like the what's the scene where they're like testing the blood in the gas?
Yeah.
And they're like,
Yeah.
It's the fucking best.
yeah, and they're like bringing up all this tension, like, oh, we're sure it's this guy. We're gonna test this blood, and then someone else just goes nuts. That you just like,
Yeah.
it's just the way the tension's all built up. Apparently, the guy
Again, John Carpenter.
yeah, I was gonna say, yeah,
He's the
John,
master.
yeah, absolutely. Except for like
Can't beat him.
the movie that terrified me as a child was Ghosts of Mars. I watched that when I was like 5, and I couldn't
That's
watch
like
it
the
for
worst John Carpenter.
yeah, it
film,
is
probably.
absolutely. It sucks. I watched it again like 3 weeks ago because I'm
Yeah.
like, this like movie like gave me nightmares for years. I'm like, this sucks.
Mm.
This is really
Yeah.
bad. I'm like, why is Jason Statham in this?
Why is Ice Cube?
Yeah, Ice
it's
Cube.
all- such a weird cast, but
But yeah,
Yeah.
just the thing, like, you know, just the layers of like the fact that the set at the start of the movie is the blown up set from the end of the movie. Like they shot the
Yeah.
rest of the movie and then they came back around and shot the start in the place that they blew up. The fact that the
Yeah.
Swedish guy yells the entire premise of the movie right at the start of the movie. And if you could understand what he's saying, the movie is ruined. Shoot the dog.
Yeah.
The dog is not the dog or whatever. I can't remember the exact words, but yeah, it's so good.
yeah, true. Yeah, that.
Well, I
film
don't want to
is
watch this
fucking
now.
incredible.
Oh,
It's so good.
What,
It's
you
so good.
haven't seen it?
no.
Ah,
God, you have to see the thing.
even like what I've said, like does not take anything away from that movie. Like
No.
just the
Yeah. Do you love it? Do you love it when that film came out? It was like considered a failure, and like
yeah,
John Carpenter thought like his fucking
his
career
career
was over because it had kind of came out the same time as like E.T. and it was actually the same year definitely as E.T.
Yeah,
Maybe
it
it
got
was like the same
I,
weekend.
no, I think
even.
I was the same. Yeah, I think they were both like summer
Mm.
blockbusters, and he just got crushed by ET. Fucking Rob
Yeah,
Bottin
no-
ended up in the hospital because he just worked himself to death in his first ever movie, basically.
Yeah.
That's
but
the
yeah,
way
it was
to
just
be.
like
Jeez.
so many things like making the alien and stuff like that comes out of the chest and everything, and John Carpenter just being so determined that like, no, we're going to like show this on screen. It's like, you know, Alien had kind of done the thing where it's like everything was in the shadows, it was
Yeah.
all kind of left up to the imagination, and John Carpenter's like, no, this is going to be shown. We are going to show everything, and it's like usually it's kind of like the less you see, the better. But for some reason, the
way
more
that
you
they
see,
did
the
that.
better.
Because it was just off the wall.
Like-
It was just like it just morphing into all
Insanity.
this everything that this whatever it actually is has ever come into contact
Yeah.
with. It's a dog, and then it's got a giant mouth that opens, and then tentacles start shooting out of
Oh,
it.
God.
Apparently,
And the
the
head just like rips
Yeah,
off and turns into a
coming at it
fire and-
anywhere, yeah. But also,
Oh,
apparently, the
God.
guy, like when he gets his arms cut off in the stomach, was actually
yeah.
a double amputee, and he puts his hands in the stomach, and there's actually a mechanical device that
whoa.
cut off like his fake hands
Fake
that
arms.
they put back on. I'm like, this guy's had like a factory accident. You're like, do it again, bruv. Come on,
Do it again.
just, one,
bro.
just one more
Amazing.
time. We're just gonna get one more
Yeah.
out of you.
Relive your trauma
Yeah.
a few more times.
Like,
Yeah.
it's fucking wild.
That's like too close, too soon, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
Uh,
All right, Marky,
especially if
what
that's
about-
like a similar way that he lost them.
yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I was thinking. Yeah.
That's actually
Like
the
some sort of
premise for
bear
the
trap
film.
thing.
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
a real life story.
Margy, what about you though?
God,
What's your
that's
favorite
hilarious.
scary movie?
Well, I'm not good with scary movies. They make me really sad, and I get real depressed and unhappy from watching them. So I can only do really camp ones that are like purposefully not purposefully, they just are ridiculous, and you're like you know, I could handle gratuitous violence. I love gratuitous violence. Like give me a blood splatter any day, but probably The Evil Dead's the first one that comes to mind because it's so
Yeah.
funny.
Mm.
It's so
So
funny,
good.
and every time I watch it, it just makes me think of the Black Dahlia murder song "Raped in a Hatred by
Yeah,
Vines of
same,
Thorn."
yeah.
So whenever I watch it, it's like it takes me to a safe place because Black Dahlia murder starts playing through my head, and I just think it's so funny. It's so dumb.
And then they
like,
just get
oh.
funnier and dumber as they go on.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Army
Yeah.
of Darkness is
I'm
like
a-
the
give me-
silliest film ever.
I know, like my girlfriend, she'd only seen like the remake Evil Dead, I'm like, oh, have I got a movie to show you?
Have I got a treat for you?
I'm like, oh yeah, it's the sequel to the original Evil Dead movies, and then like I put on Army of Darkness. It starts with a car falling out of it's like medieval castle. And I'm just like,
so ridiculous.
yeah, it's fantastic though. They knew what they accidentally did with the first one and just ran with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Sam Raimi's
Flawless.
a genius. What he did with that first film is like fucking incredible.
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, speaking of like remakes that actually nailed it, the Evil Dead remake I think is fucking awesome.
Agreed.
I think it's actually so good. Yeah.
Well, the sequel should be out soon, isn't it? Didn't when we had
Yeah,
Tristan
Evil
on the
Dead
podcast,
Rise or something.
Yeah, when we had Tristan on the podcast, he said that he'd finished it up at the start of the year or something like that. So that's
well, the thing. He was working on it in New Zealand, which was really cool. But yeah, he was telling me it's apparently like set in a skyrise building in like New York or something. Like it's like Evil Dead set in an apartment, which is
so
that's
it's
why it's called Evil Dead Rise.
That's cool. So it's like a completely new. Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, it's meant to be like really different. Like not.
I didn't know
kind
New
of don't
Zealand had
expect
high
like cabin in
rises.
the woods. Yeah.
To be fair,
like,
I
maybe
didn't.
the exterior stuff is like CGI, and then it's like.
I guess if you go off Sam Raimi, like basketball courts usually don't have cabins in them either. That's how he shot the second one. He built a 2-story house inside a basketball court and then actually drowned people with fake blood.
So wild. I love it.
Oh dear.
Redbeard, what's your top pick?
Well, I mean, I think like everyone, it's very much like, how do you pick just one? So I've got an honorary mention, and then I have like the first one that always comes to mind. Like whenever anyone's like recommend a horror film, the first film that always comes to mind is The Descent. Because I think The Descent is a phenomenal film on so many levels. But
is that the one where they're trapped in a cave or something?
Yeah, it's like with the group.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
But the thing about it as well is it mixes so many different forms of horror. Because obviously there's like the claustrophobic stuck in a cave, but then you've got the monsters, and then you've got the gore, and then you've got the psychological. But my absolute favorite thing about The Descent is the rewatchability of it, because the more you watch it, the earlier you see the monsters, because they're there from pretty much the second the girls go in the cage, but they're like stuck up against walls and they're covered in mud, and so it's just like the camera will pan past the wall, and you might not notice that you've just seen a monster in there. And so I think it is an amazing film. And it's always it's probably not my favorite, but anytime anyone says recommend a horror film, The Descent is always my first suggestion for some reason, because I think it's just fucking great.
I don't know. I was going to say, I don't know why that just made me think of like 28 Days Later as well, The Descent. Like maybe it's because they're both like British.
Yeah, both it's similar sort of time frame for both of them as well. Similar sort of budget and
and both like creature vibes, like both kind of have these like I don't know.
Yeah. But my
creatures,
my honorary mention of my favorite scary movie though is actually a G-rated film. Pause for effect. Who here has seen Return to Oz?
Oh my god, no. You're considering that a horror movie?
It is terrifying beyond compare. So pretty much what the kind of story is that for some reason Dorothy's younger in Return to Oz than she is in Wizard of Oz. It's made in like the 80s. It's made by Disney. A young Fairuza Balk plays Dorothy in this, and she keeps on having these dreams and talking about this place called Oz. And Auntie May and the uncle that I forget his name, they don't know what to do. So they take her to a fucking mental institution, and they try and give her electroshock therapy, and she breaks out and she runs, and it's like bucketing with rain, and she falls into this river, and then she wakes up back in Oz. But Oz has been taken over, and there's like these dudes that have wheels for hands and feet that like roll around and shit. And like there's this room, there's like this queen that's in charge, and the queen can like remove her heads, and she has like a hall full of fucking heads. It is terrifying beyond belief, but it is a G-rated fucking film. Go and watch it because it's fucking amazing. But yeah, I watched this when I was a kid. I watched this when I was like 5 or 6 years old, thinking, oh yeah, it's like a sequel to The Wizard of Oz. It is Fuck.
So what they just went like, let's make Wizard of Oz, but we'll make it Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
That's
It's
hilarious.
like you know, they say that Wizard of Oz is like a really, really good drug trip. Return to Oz is like a really bad drug trip, like a bad one. It's a really, really good film, but yeah, it's like it is really scary when you're 5 years old and this thing is rated G and you're not expecting the shit that happens in it.
For sure. But like even on that same level is like The Wizard of Oz is also kind of terrifying. Like watching that as a kid with my mum was like definitely would get very scared when the flying monkeys were pulling apart the scarecrow, and definitely like the Wicked Witch is fucking terrifying. What the hell?
Yeah, it's like
it is like evil.
All those weird creatures from those areas, like the Never-Ending Story, the Dark Crystal.
Oh my God.
It's all terrifying for children. It's not for children. It shouldn't be G.
It's really,
I can't do the Dark Crystal. The puppets of the good guys are too scary. I'm like, that's not right. That's absolutely not. They'll be in my dreams. Thank you.
And if the puppets don't get you, Bowie's Bulge will.
But yeah, Return to Oz scarier than all of those. Like I'm not even.
I thought you meant
kidding.
my cat Bowie.
Like
I was like, she's not that fat.
I'm gonna have to check it out.
Do it. I don't know what streaming service it's on. It may be on Disney Plus. I know it's a Disney film. I'd like downloaded it, but yeah,
it's the internet. Everything's free.
It's somewhere on the internet. I'm sure it is available on DVD as well. But yeah, it's worth a watch. It's really, really worth a watch. But yeah, it's creepy as shit. It really is.
Speaking of Wizard of Oz, quick little thing. I just watched recently on Shudder. There's this series called Cursed Films. And they basically just like they're these mini documentaries just diving into these films that were apparently cursed during the making, like people would die and all this crap. And so you guys have probably heard like the conspiracy that like you can see a munchkin, one of the actors playing a munchkin hanging in the background and stuff like that. So they dive into that. That's very creepy. And then
is it a true rumor?
Well, like you can see it, like there is this like silhouette in the background of a scene of like something clearly there, and then they remastered it and put like a big like ostrich over it or something to like hide it. So it's kind of like
what? Do you know what would stand out here?
Yeah,
an ostrich.
You wouldn't. You wouldn't hide it if there wasn't something weird about it.
So they do go to the effort of hiding it, which. Like, you know, you're like, okay, why are you hiding it? Why don't you just have an explanation of what it is? But then, like, they had people that were working on the film and they're like, it's just a rumor, blah, blah, blah. But then they also admitted that they put an ostrich over it, so I don't know.
Yeah, if you had nothing to hide, you wouldn't hide it, basically. Is that 100%?
Exactly.
Like, I hadn't heard that, and I didn't really believe that was real until you've told me that they tried to hide it, and now I'm like, well, it 100%. It 100% is a hanging munchkin then.
It must be,
so
and even if it isn't, I'll believe it.
Yeah, so you can YouTube the before and after and see the two things, but yeah, just saying how terrifying the Wicked Witch was. You got to imagine that movie was made in the 30s, which is insane. Just to even say that is fucking insane because the movie's incredible. But I think everyone just found the Wicked Witch so terrifying that the actress who played her had to do this talk show circuit without makeup, showing that she's a real person, and all the hosts would keep making her do the lines, but thinking that her doing the lines without the makeup would make her seem not creepy. So on this talk show, this old, like, sweet-looking old lady is going like, "I'll get you, my pretty," and it's like that's
this is worse.
Almost scarier than her in like green makeup, and you know she's clearly a character. But now they're making her be herself and say the scary lines to somehow like remove the stigmatism about it all. But it's like it made it worse. It like ruined her career. Like I feel so bad for her.
Yeah.
But,
it makes me think of like Cannibal Holocaust. Apparently, the director had to get one of the ladies that was murdered in the movie to appear in court because they think that she
To
actually
appear
was
alive.
dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
there's
they had to do that because he wanted to make
people
it
to
really,
think,
really
yeah.
real. And so he actually made them sign contracts that said once the film had finished like filming, they had to go into isolation for like a year afterwards. And so no one knew. Yeah, no one knew where these people were. And so they literally thought these people were dead. And so he actually had to make them break their contracts to come on to, I think it was actually a talk show or something like that. Because
I'm pretty sure it was caught. I'm pretty sure it was actually caught.
It may have been caught. But yeah, I know
it was Judge Judy. Let's go for that.
Yeah, I know that's because, he made them sign contracts saying that they wouldn't be seen for a while afterwards to kind of make it seem like it was more real. But it had the opposite effect and made it too real. I did used to love that film a lot until I found out that all the animals killed in the film were actually killed. Like they actually killed the monkey, they killed the turtle, they killed like every animal that's killed in it was actually killed on camera. And I'm like, now I can't enjoy this anymore.
Yeah. You definitely feel shitty watching it. You're just like,
yeah.
I don't actually
Yeah, people still eat meat.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That happens every day in factory farming. Change the topic, quick, Josh. She's going there.
Yeah, but
crazy.
I mean, we're already
get us started.
We're already like 40 minutes into this podcast and haven't even gotten to the main beat about it. I mean, obviously, Josh, you've joined us on what we're calling the Halloween Hootennany, because you are you're a horror film director as well as you're a massive fan of horror. It's Halloween, so we got into talk all the kind of spooky and scary things. But I guess like the main thing we wanted to cover is why as humans are we so attracted to the macabre? Why are we so attracted to the spooky? Why do we want to be so close to things that do scare us and whatnot? And I'm certain Margy has looked into the psychology because Margy is our resident psychology nerd. So Margy, do you want to start us off with some of your research? What have you found out about?
Have a legitimate answer.
Let's find out the science first.
I was curious about this because, like, I just don't get it. They leave me with a bad feeling, and but says the girl who finds serial killers fascinating and can tell you way too many facts about John Wayne Gacy. Anyway,
exactly.
But like, so obviously, why we like or dislike something comes down to our psychology, and to enjoy horror, you have to have some certain protective psychological frames in place. So there are 3 protective frames. There's the safety zone frame, the detachment frame, and the control frame. So for the safety zone frame, you have to acknowledge that you're distanced and safe from the evil on screen. Like, this isn't gonna come and get me. Like, this isn't really happening. Detachment is where you can witness horrible scenes and detach from them. Normally people can do this just by reminding themselves that they're not real. It's just actors. You know that you're watching a movie. And also the control frame, which is where you're confident in your ability to control your fear or the dangers present. So it's like watching a zombie film and being like, I could outrun them, or like, well, I wouldn't be dumb enough to go back into the house and stuff like that. And you're confident you could overcome any perceived danger or horror that the scary movie raises. So like, for me, like going into a scary movie, I'm not confident I can handle how scared I get. So that probably doesn't help me. So if you're lacking one of these frames, you're not going to enjoy horror films. And then there's also certain personality types more likely to enjoy horror. So thrill or sensation-seeking people. So people who are more likely to seek out novel, risky, or intense experiences. So like, normally we'd probably tick all those boxes, right? We all have tattoos. That's an intense experience. You'd think that would parallel. Or if you're someone who enjoys thrill-seeking behavior. People who are less empathetic, and then they're less impacted by the suffering on screen. Those who are male, they tend to enjoy scary films more than females. Though, and I hate that we're the perfect sample group for that. But females tend to enjoy the horror movies where the evil is defeated at the end more. So, like, if you're, so you guys might be more likely to enjoy a horror film where like the horror persists and everyone dies. But like, I might be more likely to enjoy one where it's got a nicer, less bleak ending,
like The Mist.
And if you have an openness to new experiences. That movie's so scary.
That is the bleakest ending of any film. Oh my god, it's so insane. He just like kills his family, but then it's like
everything's fine now.
There, and he's like, If you just had waited 2 more minutes, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's funny. If you have an openness to a new experience, you're more likely to like horror movies. So I'm bad at new experiences, so that might be why.
I fear change.
I
like my comfort
definitely I miss the detachment frame. Like I cried at Apocalypse Now, but I guess that's different because it's based on reality. Because I was like, the horrors of war. I wasn't crying at like the end. I thought it was hilarious, but I was crying at like all the people who had to suffer, and I was like, oh god. So like, and like my empathy. And it's not like I thought it might be like a neurodivergent thing or something, or like there might be some kind of link in there, but I couldn't find anything. It just kind of depends on your emotional resilience. If you're hypersensitive, you're more likely to dislike them. And like at least a quarter of horror film viewers experience stress type reactions, but that's kind of experience. But yeah, and then there's things where it's like the presence of like the stimulation that you get from horror films gets you going. It's called Zillman's excitation transfer theory, which sounds cool. So we get positive stimulation from the joy and excitement of watching a horror film, and then we get negative stimulation from the fear and anxiety, and we experience both these negative and positive stimulations when we're watching the horror movies. And the more scared you get, the more excitement and enjoyment you get, and the more scared you get, the more adrenaline you get released, and the more heightened the stimulation, the more euphoric the feeling is at the end of the horror movie of like accomplishment and relief. It's like, yeah, you survive the threatening situation, you feel more confident in your ability in life, and you can handle other anxiety-provoking situations. Yeah, and also apparently people like scary stuff because we're innately curious about the dark side of humanity, and it's a safe way to experience that. You know, you watch a horror movie and you're just watching it, but you could kind of explore the darker things without, well, except for that movie where they killed the turtles. But like, you can experience some darker things. Yeah, exactly. People could explore darker themes without actually having to really explore them. So that's kind of some reasons, which I think makes some sense there. Like,
well, I mean, Josh, with that psychology in mind, what made you want to take the leap from just being a horror fan to actually making the horror film?
Yeah, I don't know if it plays too much into the psychology that we were maybe just talking about of like why we want to be scared, but definitely, yeah. Do you want me to answer that question first, or
bit of both?
Why I did the leap?
You can take it which way you like.
Well, yeah, I guess I don't really understand why we put ourselves in these situations, because like I feel like I grew up in a haunted house. I grew up in a very big house with about like 18 rooms in it and stuff, and like,
oh my god,
there was a whole floor of the house that like I was too scared to go on. And I never slept there alone as a kid or anything.
Lived experience.
Like, yeah, so like I literally like lived in fear in my own home. Yet I would still watch like supernatural horror films, and they would give me nightmares for weeks to like a ridiculous length, like say like The Grudge or The Ring, or those really kind of messed up ones that you go home and you're like, fuck, is that little boy like in my cupboard? Like I actually can't sleep tonight. And but something would still keep bringing me back to like watching another one and trying to see if maybe I'll be over it. Like maybe
I hate this house. I better go watch Burnt Offering.
You get it's because you get that you get the release of good chemicals when you watch the movie. Like no matter how bad it gets, like you still get that little rush at the end. It's like, oh, thanks, brain.
I think that's an interesting point, because it's something I hadn't thought about, Margy, until literally you just said that. But I remember like as a kid, horror movies probably used to scare me more obviously than they do now, but like I remember always feeling the need to watch it to the end because I knew that there was a resolution at the end. Like my brain wanted to get to that point. Like it was like, okay, this is the scary stuff, but it is going to get to the good part. And so my brain I just stay watching it.
Because if you just remove yourself midway through the film, that fear is just going to like sustain itself, and like it's going to stay at that height until you follow because you are the character when you're the protagonist when you're watching the film. So you need to see them get over the fear and be like, oh, it was actually this all along or something. Oh, I'm just actually like psychotic and now I need to live in a mental institution. Like, that's fine.
Oh, it was just old man Jenkins.
Yeah, it was old man Jenkins who owns the old amusement park. I knew it. Yeah.
I would have gotten away with it too
with
if it wasn't for that trademarked saying I probably can't say.
Yeah. I agree with you, Josh. I feel like you need to get through to the end, and that's the only thing that really makes it better. And then you put on an episode of Simpsons before you go to sleep, just to like, palate cleanser.
Balance it out.
And then yeah. But
But what was the leap then to film fan to filmmaker?
Well, yeah, it was just like always this like deeper appreciation for what was going on behind the scenes. Like, I remember when I was a kid, I used to watch this show called Movie Magic, and it used to show like how was it done, and but like that's a very easy thing to do now on Instagram. You can probably just there's all these cinema pages where it like has the side by side of like, here's them with the green screen and here's the final shot. But as a kid, it's like I thought movies were like real footage of stuff that was happening. Like I used to like think in my head like, how did they convince that guy to like die for that film? Like, his
God, so lucky they had a film camera there.
Yeah. Imagine the payout.
Yeah, I used to think that the family would just get this big payout. I'm like, that's very noble of him. Like,
then sacrifice himself for the family.
Yeah.
We sold our eldest son to die on screen. It was tough, but it was worth it for the money.
But boy, is it a good film. We missed him, but damn, do I love Forrest Gump.
I was going to say my boy, or my girl, sorry.
My girl, yeah.
My girl, yeah. So then it was like watching shows like this. I was like, oh shit, there's this whole like magic that happens behind the scene. And I always grew up just like, cinema nerd, film buff. And I always like dreamed of like being on set one day, just observing my favorite actors doing their thing or watching my favorite director do their thing. And I guess that's why like every time I brought a DVD, I would like watch the film and then I would watch all the special features without fail, all the little featurettes, and that was what excited me the most. And then like growing up as well, because I said I lived in this kind of crazy house, it was always getting location scouted for films and TV shows and stuff. So there were like often times that there'd be a whole film crew parked in my front yard and just filming there for a week. And so like I actually was on set, during my childhood, which was really cool. And then, it's just, I just wanted to do it. I've always wanted to do it. I've never really written anything until just before the pandemic. I was like, all right, I've got an idea. I started meeting some friends who were also who were already in the industry. And I basically just like pitched one of them an idea one day. And he was like, fuck, we could just like do that. Like that probably wouldn't cost that much money and stuff. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, like, I know these people and blah, blah, blah. So I did this pilot for a TV show that I wrote and created. And then I was sort of like trying to pitch that, get that off the ground. And through that, I met this producer who said, that TV show's too ambitious, do a short horror film. That's a real easy way into the industry to like, kind of break out. And so then the pandemic hit and me and all my filmmaking friends were all just left with nothing to do. So wrote a horror film. We all shot it in like 5 days. And then we spent like 6 months editing it, during the lockdowns and stuff. So it was kind of like the right thing at the right time.
Yeah.
The pandemic definitely like gave me this, weight off my shoulders with my full-time job where I could just like be a bit selfish and just like be like, okay, I'm just going to finally tackle this thing that I've always wanted to tackle. And it was a lot of fun. I loved it.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Does it change Does it change your appreciation or your experience in watching films now that you've made one?
Yeah, it's insane. Like, it made me appreciate all the smaller roles that, sort of the unsung heroes behind the camera that, you would never really think about how much work a gaffer does. Or like, that's like a really physical fucking job. Like, gaffers are these like built tradie guys who are like fucking like just lifting shit, and they're literally running back and forth every day, and they're doing all this like heavy lifting and dragging the cameraman across a dolly and all this stuff. And it's like, if you're like on set just watching that for a full day, you're like, Jesus Christ, can someone get this guy a beer? Like, this guy is like sweating. He's sweating head to toe. But like, the people that really get the credit are the producers, who are kind of like standing around and like, it's not a physical job. It's a very like,
it's the people that are standing around pretending that those people aren't people.
Yeah, but it's like, but like each job has its own. You break a mental sweat, you break a friggin' emotional sweat, you break a physical sweat. It's like everything is hard. Like there isn't really an easy job. And like I was like a PA on a few commercials and TV shows during the pandemic, and like I was fucking exhausted. I was like driving around town all day. I was like getting people coffees. I was like unloading shit off trucks, loading shit up, like helping set this up. It was just like I was on my feet all day running, and it was really hard. No one really cares about the PAs. It's like that's like the entry level job. But it's like now when I did my film, I was like I want really good friends to be those people, because it is a job where you're in contact with every single person on set, and it's like you need to be this certain personality, and it can be a really rewarding job if you like, put in what you put in and stuff. So yeah, definitely I appreciate all those roles, having seen them firsthand. And now when I watch films, it's almost, sometimes it's hard to watch films now, because it's like from the post-production side of things, like sitting in an editing room for like 6 months and knowing all the little tricks you have to do of like, cut to the back of her head so we can re-record, that line, and, just these little kind of clever things you have to do to like make it work. I'm really aware of it when I'm watching films. I'm like, that was ADR, that was shot on a different day, that continuity is fucked, like what's that about? She was holding this and now she's not holding that. And it just like bugs me. Like I can't, I almost like can't watch things sometimes. But then when I watch a film that I don't notice any of that, I'm like, that was a
holy
good film.
Shit.
Like,
yeah.
Because you're not meant to notice that stuff. And it's the more you notice it, the more you realize, okay, their budget was probably a little low. They probably cut some corners there. That was probably one take. They probably had multiple cameras. So I definitely see everything totally differently now. And it's maybe made me a little cynical, which I wish it didn't. Like, I like to enjoy films, but sometimes I just can't now. But
that's the definition of like ignorance is bliss. Like in any industry as well. Like obviously, like I'm much more in the music industry, but the same thing is just like the shit that like I just wish I just didn't know this, so I could just sit and enjoy something. But I'm always just like, I can't turn off that business brain whenever it comes to anything to do with music.
Oh, it's like once you step into a recording studio and you see what mixing and mastering and all that shit involves, you're just like, oh, now everything's ruined.
Well, it's like
I can hear the things I don't want to hear. Like,
even when we're talking like the last episode, how we were talking about hybrid theory and the fact that like I was like in the studio, they've literally removed the sound of the pick hitting the string. It's that edited. They've like,
oh wow, really?
Yeah, you can't. It's either hybrid theory.
Don't tell me this. Don't talk down on hybrid theory.
Yeah, no, it's a great album.
No, this is still a Linkin Park fan club.
It's the greatest album of all time. Yeah, and it cannot be matched.
It's a great album, but there's no guitar pick to be seen. It just goes like it's just like just after you hit it. It's just as a guitarist, it just sounds so weird.
Wow.
But it's interesting having, you know, the experience of being inside of it. Because Grant, I know as well, like you're, as well as a fan of horror films, you're a fan of like horror games like Deep Space and stuff like that. Do you find being a character, like being in control of something, how does that change between just sitting there watching and actively being involved in a game like Dead Space?
It depends. Like the first time you play it, obviously, like it's terrifying, especially like when you don't know what's coming. But on the other hand, when you play for the second time, it's like a hectic power fantasy because you're like, these things are terrifying, but I know I'm gonna fucking crush you. Like, it's weird. No, but
Very good.
no, it's like Dead Space specifically is, yeah. I think that's just one of those games that's just always terrifying. Like the creatures, like the fact that you kill them by like dismembering them instead of like shooting them in the head. Like it's just the opposite of what you'd ever think. And just the atmosphere of just being on like this derelict spaceship, like kind of like Event Horizon, where everyone's just gone missing and they're just crazy. Like the people who are still there are crazy. Oh, that's another one I should have put in this. Sunshine. That's another fantastic sci-fi horror movie. Anyway, but Dead Space. It's actually they're remaking that actually. It's coming out I think early next year, a remake of Dead Space, which I don't quite know how it's going to work because the twist at the end is like a pretty prolific part of the entire game, and the fact that the game's been out for 15 odd years, I'm pretty sure most people already know the twist, so I don't know if they're going to change
What's
it.
the twist?
Don't tell me I don't know the twist, so don't say it.
Okay, yeah, I won't say it.
Oh.
I've never played Dead Space.
It honestly...
See, I just Google horror movies and read the plots.
Yeah.
So I know the plot of Midsommar. I know the plot of Hereditary because I either get someone to explain it to me or I just Google it. I'm too scared to watch it.
I've actually not seen Hereditary, but I've really enjoyed Midsommar. Yeah, it's just never happened upon me where I've had it.
Did my review of it make you watch it?
Or like my close friend group, they're just like, oh, it's like the best horror movie. And it's funny that you said to me that I'm a horror buff because I used to hate horror movies. I used to think they were really boring. And so I like kind of, I don't know, just like eventually it clicked with me about what they were about. Like, I'm like, oh, this is not, you know, I'm like, oh, I don't really care about being scared. Like to me, it's boring, like just trying to scare myself. And I'm like, it's not about that. I think later on when I figured out that it's, you know, or just like all like the hard work that goes into all the practical stuff, you know, the kind of environment that like the horror movie community and especially like the creators is like, you know, it's a very tight knit, like nice community compared to like other forms of like media where it's like very cutthroat. You know, I think it was just like hearing about all that stuff was like opened, like warmed me up to horror as a genre, and now I'm just like, it's probably one of my more preferred genres.
It's funny to talk about Hereditary as well.
There's a
like,
common. Sorry, you go.
No, I was gonna say like I think the thing that I love about it as well is like, because obviously like fantasy is like, you know, you want to find that detachment from reality. Obviously you don't want to like, you're not actually believing this stuff is happening, but there's, I won't say what scene it is. Josh will know exactly what scene I'm talking about, but there's something that happens in Hereditary that even in the film, you're like, no, that didn't actually happen. No, that's absolutely, that didn't just happen. And like, literally it's not until like like there's a really long kind of thing that happens afterwards. Then it goes to the next day and it's not like, then you realize, oh, this actually happened. And so there's this weird,
Does this involve a car window?
Yeah, that's I've heard enough about it to know about that incident. Yeah,
it involves
don't lose your head over it.
Yeah. It involves. I would just say it involves anaphylaxis. Fans, if you haven't watched it, go and watch it. But yeah, this particular scene, like I remember watching and be like, no, it must be like a dream or like a fantasy or like no, something's actually like that. And then the next day it's like, oh no, it's fine. And then you go, oh no.
So do you know what's so what I find is so genius about that scene that I just realized the last time I watched it is that in your head when you're watching that scene, you're like, you think you know the absolute worst possible outcome that could possibly happen here. Like they're setting it up that you try to jump ahead and your brain is like, I know it's going to happen because I'm going to think of what's the worst thing that I think could happen? That's going to happen. And then something literally like 100 times worse happens. And that's what's like so shocking.
It's like, how did you even think of that?
Like, you've already put in your head, like, what's the very worst thing I can think of? And then it just is like up there, and you're just like,
So funny.
whoa, like, what? Like, I can't think of another movie that's done that, because it's like,
Well,
generally these horror type scenarios have been done more than once, and so you generally have an idea of where a horror scene would be going, and usually it hits that point that you think it's going to hit. Maybe it's a little gorier than you thought, maybe it's a little, but it's rarely something so extremely different to what you were thinking that it just like fully like takes your breath away, and you're just like for like Josh said, you're just like, that didn't happen, for like and then you're just sitting there with it for so long until you realize, fuck, that actually happened. Like, that is crazy.
So
and the way it plays out is so like
kind of
realistic.
like,
it's not very like
yeah,
it's not this heightened thing that's, you know, it's just insane. It's such a brilliant film.
is it like a similar vibe to say like when the old guy in Midsummer is forced to jump off a cliff? You're like, oh, what's the worst thing that can happen? Like, he's just gonna die, and then you're like, why'd you have to do that as well?
You get his head smashed with
a hammer, like a giant mallet. You're just like, what the fuck?
It's fucking wild. So yeah, Ari Aster definitely has this like thing where
it's the same guy, isn't it?
He knows how to put you in this. Yeah, he knows how to put you in this scene, make you believe the worst, and then just sort of take it to this other level. And he's just a genius. I thought Midsummer was crazy. Midsummer was insane, just on this level of like, how did he make a horror film during the day?
Yeah.
Like, how did all those daytime scenes feel so unsettling? Like you were in the woods at night. It like had that feeling, but it was like bright, saturated trees. Like,
it's like from memory as well. It's like a lot of low angles as well, isn't it? Like a lot of low, like facing upwards angles. I think that's also like what, like, because that's like not that's not a like looking.
I'm afraid of those angles. I do not look good at that angle.
But like that's not a daytime angle. Like, you know what, walking around like in a skulking position. I think that's like what is kind of unnerving about it. I reckon that's the trick they've used to make daylight feel not daylight.
For sure.
And
100%. Just like general like long takes and really like these slow push-ins of the camera, like that are almost like unnoticeable, but it's happening so slow that like you feel like you're moving with it, but you're moving at such a slow pace that, you know, you're trying to like regulate your breathing and like control your anxiety of like, why is this taking so long? Like, is this leading somewhere? What's happening? Usually with horror, you're thrust into stuff quite quickly, and it's all this like jumps and sudden movements. But for some reason, if you just like take your time with it, and it's like this rubber band that's just being like stretched slow and slow and slow, it just is like unsettling.
Better payoff, for sure.
Oh,
absolutely. I think the score plays a lot into it as well. It was a very like disturbing, you know, score, and that plays a lot. That plays a massive part in horror films.
100%.
It's just like
the soundtrack makes or breaks it.
Yeah, like, for sure.
And you like watching and you can also think like, does the movie stand up in the same way without this? Like, how does it work without the score? Because you know how sometimes I don't know, like the latest Scream movie did that heaps. You know, like you know that there was going to be like a jump scare of, you know, like Ghostface showing up, and they kept swelling the soundtrack up to do fake out. So like they'd swell it up and it'd open a door, and then it would swell up as it opened the next door, and you're like, would this be just as scary without the music? Or like, would this be just as, I mean, it was funny, but like, you know, and like, so like watching other movies, you know, it's like, doesn't have the same scare effect. It's like watching like a sitcom without like, when they wait for like the laughter track to play. It's like, you know, if the music wasn't playing, is it just someone sitting there staring?
You know,
or like...
what you just said about the sitcom, you can YouTube Friends without the laugh track, and it is like, it is not funny at all. Like, it's not even, it's like, hey Ross, hey Joey, And it's just like these like long pauses of like there would have been like
Yeah.
like these little bits that like put you in this mood of like, oh, I'm watching something funny. But without it, it's just like
I've been
you
lied
just
to.
have crickets there of just these like long pauses. It's so awkward. Holy shit.
Yeah,
It's
but I think
hilarious.
like
I want people to do that with horror films. I want
Yeah.
to maybe
Laugh
I'd
track in
find
horror
them more
films.
bearable.
It is actually something that brings me back around to Dead Space. So the soundtrack in Dead Space, what happens is it completely randomly climaxes and stops. So like you could be anywhere and the music could be getting like
Same.
really intense, and there could be like creatures happening, there could be nothing happening, but at the same time it could be dead silence, which I find is far more scary because I'm like, I know that something can happen at any point in this game, but the fact that there's no sound means that like there's no indication of when I'm gonna get like attacked by some fucking insane creature.
Well, that's actually the genius thing about getting a good composer to do the film is their knowledge of the absence of sound, because the silences are almost more important than the sound itself, because like they just know how to play the audience of like building them up, and you're always hearing this consistent ambient noise the whole film that you don't even realize is there, and then just before the peak scary moment, like just before a jump scare, they'll drop everything right back, and your ears are for the first time hearing silence for the first time in the film. Even when you thought you'd heard silence before, there was still like a hum, there was room tone, but when you finally experience true silence, especially in like a cinema, you all of a sudden like hear yourself breathing, and you hear other people around you breathing, and you're trying to hold on to it, and the anticipation of what's about to happen is like the terrifying part.
Yeah, and the cinema experience especially, because I think that's what fucked me up so much about A Quiet Place is like I've never been in a cinema that quiet, because everyone's like trying not quiet. Everyone's like trying not to like open a bag of chips or anything like that, because it's like everything is just fucking like on edge.
You can't even eat like one kernel of popcorn because it's like squeaking and cracking, and you're just like
you expected that thing on the screen to be like
No, that would be me in the cinema though, just like completely unaware of my surroundings, being Spectrum Live, just like the silent bit, just like crunch, crunch, crunch. Do you think something's gonna happen at this bit?
But we've already been talking for over an hour now, and I have to put we're gonna start to round out this sort of conversation, because we still have to get into the final beat, and I'm very excited for the final beat.
Hit it.
But but we've got to do one thing first, and I've got to ask everyone. There is obviously that satanic panic thing that happens, and violent movies are going to cause violence and all this sort of stuff, and like obviously like psychology proves that isn't true. But I was curious if we were self-referential enough to know how scary movies or how violent media has affected us. And I'll give you some time to think about it like that. Well, because I was self-referential about it, and I tried to think like violence has been so normalized in all the media that I've consumed since I was a kid. I played some of the very first-person shooters. I played the first Grand Theft Auto. I used to play that for hours and hours and hours when I would have been like 10 years old.
And yet you keep driving prostitutes down in the street. Yeah. Can you please stop?
Exactly, right?
Stop stealing cars, you jerk.
I was watching horror.
Keep the money.
I was watching horror from a very young age as well, but like I am like a fucking anti-war fucking vegan. And then it was the question that kind of set in my mind is like, does the fact that I'm a spurg and I don't like, you can't peer pressure me into doing anything. You can't bully me into doing it. I just won't do it. I'm like, nah, like it just doesn't work on me. I was like, is that the reason why? And I was like, it's obviously a bit of like nature versus nurture. But the only thing that really came to mind is like my nope reaction is definitely heightened because of horror films. Like I just thought of that, like that Eddie Murphy bit where he's talking about the Amityville horror. It's just like they go into the house. It's like, well, this is such a nice house. You know, this is a really, really like we live here. Get out. Too bad we can't stay. And then he just leaves. That would
he just leaves straight away.
That would 100% be me. Like I'm just like, nah, I'm good. Peace out. Like I've never like had a haunted house experience, but no.
Nothing can force me to stay in a situation I don't want to be in. It's just like, I'll just leave. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like,
So
even
I
in
think
just like social situations.
So I think in terms of like
nothing can force me to leave my bedroom. I refuse to leave my house. So nope.
Yeah. So I was like, in terms of the only thing I could think of that has affected me in terms of like horror movies, scary movies, anything like that is I have a very good nope reaction. And I like, if there's a scary noise outside, I'm not going to investigate it. Absolutely not. Not running out the front door instead of going up the stairs. Absolutely. Every single time, you know, like fuck that. Fuck that. But what about for you, Josh? How do you think horror movies and scary movies and violent media have affected you?
Yeah, so we're not talking about like positively affected us.
Oh, anyway.
Oh,
maybe it is.
I think a nope reaction's a good reaction.
Maybe in a positive way as well.
I guess it's kind of positive, but yeah, like I'm the same. Like again, growing up in a scary house, it's like sometimes when I was home alone, I thought I heard something, and something started like. I heard like glass breaking in my kitchen, but I was home alone, and I was like, I just like froze up, and I was in the computer room, and I just like closed the door, and I just locked myself in there, and I locked myself in there for hours trying to call my family, just like, you know, something's here, like. But in my head, I was telling them that there was a ghost in the house, but they heard that someone was breaking into the house. And so they called the police and they rushed home and all this stuff. And I'm just like cowering in the office, and they come home and they like burst open the door like, Josh, you're right. I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. What was it? Like, and then we just went, and it was something silly. Like the window was open and it was a windy day and the blinds were swooping and knocking things off the shelf. So all these like vases and cups were like dropping off the shelf, smashing. But I thought it was a ghost like hurling things at the walls, like poltergeist style, stacking chairs and stuff.
And your parents think you're being like murdered and abducted, and they're like, "Oh God!"
Yeah, I'm like, something's like there's smashing in the kitchen. Like I don't know what's going on, and they fully thought a human being was in the house, breaking in, trying to kill me, but. I was like, no, I was talking about ghosts. Like,
obviously.
Human. Why would there be a human in here? What are you talking about?
I'm not afraid of a human in my house.
Yeah. So, like, that's always my thing. I never go to, like, oh, it's a home invasion. Oh, there's someone in the yard. It's like, there is ghosts here. This house is haunted. Should we start trying to move? Because
you're just like, I hate Occam's razor. Can't be a human.
Yeah, exactly.
Fuck you, Occam's razor.
It's got to be a spectral entity.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's a very irrational thing, but I guess that's how they've affected me.
I love it.
Grant, what about you? How have horror movies and scary movies and violent media affected you?
I don't know. It makes up about 100% of my not working time, to be honest. So I'd imagine I can't really think of a specific thing, but I would say it has made me exactly the person I am today, for better or worse.
You're a pretty violent person, yeah? Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely violent.
Yeah. The reason why Grant's so violent in our games of Magic the Gathering, he's just always smashing everyone in the face.
No, I'm competitive. It's different. Extremely competitive. I like how you're calling me violent. The first thing you did when we started playing Skyrim together is you like, get here, fox. You start fucking murdering foxes just because you can.
And then I shot Grant in the head, and there's like an arrow sticking out of his head. It's a fucking great time.
Yeah,
it really was.
Yeah, I'm the one.
Yeah,
so I'd say the worst thing that horror has done for me is get me violent friends like Josh.
Fair.
Oh yeah.
Fair. Absolutely.
How about yourself? How about you, Margy?
Look, I think true crime definitely impacted me in the sense of like, I'm fine with the concept of there being a ghost or something in the house, like, because I volunteer a lot with like old houses in Victoria with like the National Trust and stuff. So old houses, I'm like, you can tell when something's haunted. You get the spooky vibe, and you're like, look, if I hear anything weird, I'll probably just leave. Or you just kind of like, ghost, I'm here. I'm fine with that. I'm much more afraid of people. I think people are the most scary thing.
Fair.
Maybe it's been a woman, and I'm much
people
more
are the
afraid.
worst.
I'm like, you know, like if someone breaks into a house, I'm gonna get killed or raped or both. So like, you know, so I'm like a make sure the doors are locked when I'm at home person. But
Definitely.
you know,
Doors
and like
are
I grew up
always
in the country, and like if I was home alone, I'd just get one of our large dogs and have them on the veranda, and it would just like hang out there and keep me company. And I was like, it's fine. And then like one night I was like, Dad, I heard something outside, and he's like, oh, it's probably just the wild pigs. And I'm like, the what? And he's like, yeah, they're fine. And I was like, that's much worse. But I did find a good way that that watching horror movies has impacted people.
Go on.
There's a growing body of evidence that horror movies could be used in clinical settings to treat people with anxiety or trauma, based off a recent study showing that people who watched horror movies were less psychologically distressed by the COVID-19 pandemic, and especially those who were fans of like an apocalypse subgenre or anything.
Josh
and
and
they
I.
were and they were
We were
much
very
more prepared for, and they were more emotionally prepared for additional waves of the pandemic. So there could be a future where horror movies and other forms of media like that could be used in helping anxious pages work on emotional and behavioral strategies to cope with their fears and leading to more resilience, which could be cool.
Interesting.
Yeah, so maybe the cure to my anxiety is watching more horror movies.
To be honest, like it's not exactly a horror movie, but as soon as the pandemic started like really kicking off, the first thing like my partner and I watched was Contagion.
Contagion.
Same.
My God,
Absolutely.
it was like scene for scene
Yes.
exactly what happened.
Yeah. Well, I watched
Oh my
that,
God,
and I
couldn't
watched.
believe it.
Yeah, I watched that, and I watched Outbreak, because Outbreak's another very, very good,
Yeah.
Oh, that is good.
disease pandemic
Yeah.
film.
Hey, and also watching horror movies with someone can lead to as a catalyst of falling in love, because
Some of this.
you go.
a shared co-experience of horror can lead to more excitement that you feel towards each other and can facilitate feelings of romance.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
So,
all that fun stuff.
so if you want to get laid, put on a horror movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, that's
the-
that's Eli Roth's theory. That's
go-to.
why he made Cabin Fever. He wanted to make a film that would get every male audience member laid that night, and yeah, that was his goal, and
Well,
it
I'm
probably worked.
Yeah, well,
That
you
movie's
weren't
good.
going to be able to do it with Hostel, so you had to change up his formula.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Very good.
All right, though, it is time to move into our final beat. Josh, thank you so much for taking part in this. This has been heaps and heaps of fun. I'll make sure
thanks
to
for having me.
you're
Massive
more than
honor.
welcome. I'll make sure to send links. Like they'll be in the show notes to the trailer for Josh's film Button Man, as well as his Instagram. You can find out more details about this. But so
excellent tattoo artist as well.
Amazing
I'm going to make
tattoo
Josh
artist.
do a tattoo on me.
100%.
Thank you. Yeah, come on down. Let's do
Yeah,
it.
Josh, you and me need to book in something else, but we'll talk about that after the show.
Definitely.
Um,
No, let's have a consultation right now.
Yeah,
No, because
I
Seems
want
like
one
the
on my
perfect
arse.
time. Yeah.
just
No, 'cause
starts
it's a-
charging us.
yeah. It's a sad one, not a scary one. So we're gonna keep it scary as we move into the final beat. So every Friday on the Northside Nerds Instagram and TikTok now, I've started making TikToks about these. We
What's
ask a
more
question.
scary than that?
Yeah, exactly right. TikTok, terrifying. But we ask a question.
Terrifying.
We put it out to the listeners. So, dear listeners, make sure you follow at Northside Nerds on Instagram and TikTok. You'll see the post every Friday. And there's now
Hashtag Balrogs and Blastbeats.
hashtag Balrogs and Blastbeats. This is episode 19 as well, so there's 19 other questions you can go and answer. But this week we're gonna keep it horror themed, and this is the topic is called "If You Had One Shot," and the question is if you
An opportunity.
if you got to choose the horror movie killer you think you'd have the best chance of survival against, who would you choose to get hunted by, and how likely do you think you'd survive? So, Grant, let's start with you. If you had one shot against the horror movie killer, who do you think you'd have the best chance at survival by?
If it's a franchise, can you pick the movie specifically, or is it going to be the entire franchise?
Oh,
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you can pick a killer. It's carte blanche to choose something that you want.
Jason from the second Friday the 13th, because I'll just catch a plane ticket. The cunt's never going to catch me. He's not going to be able to get on any form of transport. He's never going to get across country. Like we're not talking like Jason X that can get onto like spaceships and stuff. Or like, I'm just talking like second movie. Mostly like man powers. He might get on a boat. Every 2 years I'll just make sure that I go somewhere else.
Change continents. You're good to go. Yeah,
and, he's not gonna be able to find me. I'm sure he could walk under the water through the Marianas Trench all the way to the other side of the world, but I'll be somewhere else by the time he gets there. I'll go back to the States, and then he's got to walk back.
So good. He's way too
That's a good solution.
I love it. Margy, what about you? What killer do you think you'd have the best chance at survival by?
I followed a similar train of thought to Grant. Jaws. I just wouldn't go swimming because I don't go swimming anyway. Just stay on land.
But if he just comes out of the toilet, just.
I don't know how big your toilet is. Yeah. I'm like, wait, you want me to go? Yeah, you want me to go outdoors or get seasickness? Ew, no, thank you. I'm just gonna. No.
I think the seasickness would kill me before the shark did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be like, oh, thank God you're here. Can you just bite off my leg and distract me from my little sick tummy? My tum hurts.
Josh, as our guest of honor, which horror movie killer do you think you'd have the best chance of survival against?
I'm definitely more of I think I could survive against a human slasher. I would never be able to survive against a ghost. Not a chance. Every ghost in every film, they would win without fail. But a human person with a knife, I could probably beat. And I think the clumsiest of them all is Ghostface.
Yeah.
Ghostface is pretty shit.
Yeah, my house is always messy. There's always shit all over the floor. All he does is trip on the curled up corners of carpet and slip on a toy truck, and he's just tripping over fucking everything and falling over sofas and stuff. So I think I've got enough stuff in my house that would be this crazy obstacle course for him, and I think I'd have a pretty good shot.
I don't answer my phone, so he wouldn't be able to give me a terrifying phone call either.
Yeah, you don't get the quiz.
I don't know that number. No thanks.
Yeah.
I know that number. No thanks.
I feel like by the description of your house, I'm just going to have to start calling you Kevin from Home Alone.
Oh, yeah. Flipping on toy cars and marbles and stuff.
I'm just imagining your wife every day, Josh! You're like, oh, you found another booby trap, did you?
Just running around. Oh my God.
I love that.
So
I love
good.
that. But for me, I think
Josh?
I went through all the main ones. So Jason, I get what you're saying, but I just feel like he's just going to keep appeing because he just seems to just appear wherever you are. It's the same with Michael Myers.
That's why I specifically wanted to know if I could pick a movie.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Same with Michael Myers. You could run and he'll walk, but he's just there again. Freddy Krueger, he just appears in your dreams. So for me, I think I'd have the best chance of survival against Leatherface because I think that I could outrun Leatherface.
And we're not in Texas.
Yeah,
so
he's pretty bulky. He's
pretty
bulky.
It seems like all I need to do is outrun him, but then not stop anywhere nearby. So not stop at the local gas station, be like, help me, because that's obviously going to be his fucking, family and whatnot. Nah, I've
Leatherface Jr.
I feel like in cross country run, I would outrun Leatherface, and eventually he's going to run out of petrol. Hopefully,
chainsaws are really loud. You can hear him coming.
Exactly, and
not a stealth weapon.
If he doesn't have his big hammer and meat hooks nearby, I feel like I'd be okay. So I'm going with Leatherface. I think I could outrun him. I'm not that fit, but I feel like I'm fitter than Leatherface.
He is.
And that's
I feel
really
like if you were in his vicinity, I don't know. I think you'd get trapped pretty quickly. His house is very
yours.
Falling apart, and you'd step on a floorboard and collapse and fall through to the basement, and then you're just done
and then
for.
I'm just
I
in
don't
trouble.
know.
But again, my nope experience is if I like saw his house, but nah, that's
A
good.
rickety house. Yeah.
I don't
I've
need
gone
help
in there.
that
Yeah.
badly. I'll figure
Yeah.
it out myself. It's fine.
I'll live
But,
off the land. I don't
yeah.
even care.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dear listener, though, we need to know what who do you think you'd survive by? On the Friday, this will be posted on the Northside Nerds TikTok and on the Instagram. I'll have the wonderful edit. I'm doing cool edits now of us like telling our stories and whatnot. Who do you think you'd have the best chance of survival against and why? Let us know. Josh, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so
to make
much.
this happen.
Thank you.
It was an
Yeah.
absolute pleasure. Thanks, guys. You're all legends. I fucking
Ah.
love this podcast. It was an honor to be a
I
part
would
of it.
appreciate it.
Love having you
Especially
here.
Especially the spooky episode. I'm so
Right.
glad you thought of me.
100%.
Halloween
Amazing.
next year, you'll be back.
Yeah. We'll make it a
Make it an
regular
annual
thing.
thing.
Absolutely.
Or we do,
Yes.
could even do a special Button Man episode when it's all
Yeah.
Yeah.
When the feature length
happening.
is ready
Here
to
we go.
go, yeah, we'll get all the inside scoops. But dear listener, go and check out
Yeah.
the link in the description for the Button Man trailer. It's fucking sick. I've seen the whole thing. I got a shout out at the premiere from the director himself, and it made me feel very special. So dabbing on that, and that's how we end the podcast.